Dick Penwell was a corporal in the U.S. Army's 11th Airborne Division during World War II. What were you doing before you joined the Army?
Well, I spent a year in the CCC camps, which is the Civilian Conservation Corps, and I was stationed on the Skyline Drive. We helped to do things, clean up the roads and plant grass and things like that. And spent my year there, and then I came home for about a month. Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, and I thought, well, I might as well go in the Army, hang around here. So I looked at the schedule, and I said, the Air Force, the Airborne paid $50 more a month, so I said, I'll take that. So I went into the Airborne, and finally, after training, was assigned to the 11th Airborne Angels. And we head for overseas. And when we overseas, we started in the island of Leyte and went to New Guinea and up through the Philippines to the Los Banos and to the Manila. We had to take the things back from the Japanese because they already had taken Manila. So we got that back at Fort McKinley. And so that was a good operation. But on the way up, we met some mighty opposition from Leyte and New Guinea. But I was so fortunate to be with an outfit that was on the ball, might as well say, because we done our job, and we went up to the Luzon itself, and we went took Fort McKinley back, and then we were called back to the New Bilibid prison, which we had for our headquarters, and they told us to unpack our equipment from the battle in Fort McKinley, and they said, everybody unpack but Company B. And then we thought, oh, where are we going now? We didn't get time to do any rest. But everything was so secret that they couldn't tell you there. They didn't want nobody to find it out, the Japanese or anything. But then the day before we went, we found out that this is a secret operation because they were going to start shooting the prisoners that morning at 07 o'clock. And we had to jump at 7 o'clock to rescue the prisoners, which we did. And everything worked out so far, so good. We had the Navy coming across the Laguna de Bay with the alligators, we call them, our amphibious machines, and a lot of our prisoners wouldn't get on them to come back because they thought the thing was going to sink, and they didn't trust them.
Well, let's go back and talk about when you first went into the Army. Was it a big shock going from the civilian world to the military world?
Oh, yeah.
How did your experience in the Civilian Conservation Corps prepare you for military service?
Well, our camp, every morning we had an hour of close order drill, like they did in the Army. So that helped. So when we went in, they gave us some experience in the Army. And everything worked out good there with the guys. This is one thing I look forward to have a bunch of good guys to fight with. And our commander always told us, pick out a good man for your buddy to protect each other, which is a true statement because you need help. But now when we went up through New Guinea and Leyte, we had awful battles in Ormoc Valley. That was where the Japanese first tried to use paratroopers. So, they caught them at the door when they were coming out, the machine gunners. They weren't too successful with that because they never had training like we had.
What was your training? Where did you do your initial training?
I done my training at Fort Benning, Georgia, and they had these towers that were up 250 feet in the air, and they had like an umbrella shield on, open like your umbrella would be open. And then they would hook your parachute up to them and take you up 250 feet. And they'd snap the button and they'd drop you out of there to get you used to, landings and how you guide your chute. And this is where a lot of the guys quit. They said, send me back to my outfit. Then you volunteered for the paratroops. And if you didn't make it, then they sent you back to the outfit you came from.
So what was your first parachute jump like? Were you nervous?
Well, I was nervous, but everything was new. My most nervous jump was the second, third, fourth, because everything is supposed to happen like so many seconds apart. But boy, if it just was another second, it seemed like 10 minutes, But I was scared. Might as well say that.
So how did you feel when you earned your airborne wings?
Oh, felt good. Felt proud of myself for doing that. And I had a lot of buddies. We made it, and we stuck together. When we went to, after we graduated from Fort Benning, we went to camp in Alabama for future training, for combat training, That was a bad place. We told them we'd sooner be in combat than be there. The way the thing was. Then as we went across the country, we stopped at Denver. We were exhibition troops for the Army there that came from Fort Sill. We stopped for there a while, and then we went to Fort Ord, California. And that's where we left from to go overseas. And we went directly to Leyte.
What was it like crossing the Pacific on a troop ship?
Oh, we had a dandy. We were loaded, and the captain on that ship, I don't know how he treated his crew, but we were going to put the mail overboard on a barge to send home, because we were on the sea so long. And somebody said it's about time we get the mail going home. And he said, put it back on board. He brought it all back on the board again. That's how kind of a guy he was. And boy, that was something. So nobody bothered him, and he didn't bother us, but we didn't have no reason to ask him any more questions or anything, because I don't say. Well, we had a troop ship that was full, but then we spent 22 days on the seas because they used the zigzag course, and that's every seven minutes they zigzag on you, so the submarines couldn't pick you up, because the submarines took 9 to get their sights lined up, So we would use the zigzag course, which worked out good, because we made it to New Guinea, and we come up through the Ormoc Valley. That was an awful thing.
So what did you do with yourself for 22 days on a troop ship? How did you entertain yourself?
Played pinochle with a double deck. That's what we had, because the captain wouldn't let us come up on board, up on top, just because that one guy made the statement that about time to send some mail home, and he wouldn't let us come up.
Now, when you arrived in New Guinea, was it a surprise?
Oh yeah.
What you found there?
Yeah. People complain a little bit around in our wonderful country. They should go to some of those islands and see how people live. It's just unbelievable, the things that they have to eat. We had so many of the townspeople, when we ate the mess hall, they would come with cans and take our garbage and take it back to their families and sort out what they wanted to eat. And that's an awful way to get through this world. They got there, but then as time went on, things got better because we were going towards Manila. That was a nice place. But the Japanese had it tore up pretty good because they bombed it and shelled it and all that.
How difficult was it adapting to the jungle environment?
Oh, that's tough. When you're not used to stuff like that. Man, you go through it. And they were known as the world's best camouflagers. They could camouflage all day and you couldn't see them. And they were so used to they call them the banzai attacks. They would happen at sun up and at dusk. They would all stand up and run at you, hollering, yelling, and shooting. That's what their banzai attacks were. So when it got sun up and closer to dusk, then we sort of set up more guns and machine guns and stuff because they knew they were coming, you know. And why they'd done this, I don't understand their way of war. Because they camouflage themselves all day long, in which you couldn't see them. Then all at once they stand up and come at you. And the reason was they thought it was an honor to die for their emperor. And it's hard to fight a man that's not afraid to die, because they just keep coming. So then after that all winds up, then you go back for a little rest, you know.
How long were you in New Guinea?
About 6 months, 7 months, 5 months, something like that.
And were you mostly training there, or were you also in combat there?
We were in combat there.
What was your first combat experience like?
Well, I'll never forget that. I'll tell you, I was trying to hide behind everything I could hide behind it. But I could never understand why we're there shooting people and they're there shooting us. And you got to go, some of them guys in our outfit would be like these hunters when they go up the mountains here for deer. They would holler, "There he goes," you know, and then you shoot them. That didn't make sense to me, but you had to do it. But I am so glad that we have so many Americans that appreciate the World War II veterans.
What was the most difficult thing about fighting in the jungle?
Getting through all the entanglements and stuff. And they had these bamboo poles set up with the sharpened spears on it, would fly out and hit you, or the ring on the ground where you step in and they take you up, and you never knew when you're going to hit a trip cord with hand grenades, because they used to take, we had a lot of coconuts, and they'd take the coconut and cut it open on each end, or just one end, and then the other, put a hand grenade in it with the pin pulled, but the handle's still down, you know, once you put it in the coconut. And then they stretch a wire to another one and do the same thing. And then when you go through the jungles, you trip on them and then they will go off. So sometimes if you're close enough, they would kill you, but then the Japanese knew where you were. That was our hardest part, to try to find those tripwires. And that's hard when they put so many of them out, just like they're putting out landmines. You know, they put them tripwires there in the jungles. It was a lot of fun.
Sounds like it.
A lot of fun.
How did you find the tripwires?
Well, we had long bamboo poles, you know, to go ahead of like a feeler, you know, going through. And they weren't hard to spot when you seen the kind of things that they used. It didn't look like wires. It showed up at night, you know, not fluorescent, but you could tell where they were. And after you're there a while, you get to know where things are. But until you find out, we lost a lot of men, things like that.
How aware were you of the cultural differences between the Japanese soldiers and the American soldiers?
Well, we were more friendly with people. Japanese come in there, if you could have seen some of the sights that the Filipinos had that the Japanese done to them, you wouldn't believe it. They'd burn them at the stake, and I might actually do that. They just were torturous people. They enjoyed torture. And we had a lot of men got tortured. Look at our prisoners, how some of them said they were tortured, you know, with put them in swamps and cages and things. But we treated people a lot better. Everybody seemed to like us, even the children. They were friendly with us, you know, and they were glad we were there. I guess everybody's glad when they're bringing help. But then I got a lot of friends in there. But my thing that I never forget is my jump on that Los Banos camp.
Well, how many combat jumps did you perform?
3.
Tell us about the first combat jump.
Well, it wasn't fooling around too much. They were shooting at us, and luckily they missed us, because when you come down and shoot, you're taught to oscillate, because you're harder to hit with ground fire, with rifle fire. So I was oscillating, and so, but I wasn't no brave man.
Where was that first jump?
The combat jump to Leyte Ridge in the Philippines.
And what was your mission there?
There they had a road. The Japanese were bringing reinforcements up to a battle station. They were using this. Our job was to maintain, capture the road and put up roadblocks, because we could drop. We dropped our machine guns in pieces. They even dropped a little airborne bulldozer, they called it, small one. And they dropped things like that. We done a good job there too, because they said it was a success.
So what did you do after you hit the ground?
Well, first thing you do is try to get out and shoot right quick, you know. Then head for cover wherever you can find and look around. Closest thing you can find to get behind, and then you would look around the areas, see what's happening. Usually the Japanese were shooting at you because you could pick them out. But we tried to hide the best we could, back of foliage, and because it was the undergrowth was so thick, you could hide easily. And that's what the Japanese were the best camouflagers I ever seen. You could walk right past them, didn't even know they were there.
Now, you mentioned the Los Banos raid. Where were you when you were alerted to that mission?
At Fort McKinley. We were trying to take Fort McKinley back. The Japanese took Fort McKinley when they taken Manila. And so we tried to take it back, which we did then. And then we came back, we thought we were going to get rest. And that's when they said, everybody unpacked with B Company. So, and then they wouldn't tell us where we were going yet, but then afterwards, our commander was Lieutenant John Ringler. And he was a guy that knew what he was doing. And the operation wasn't supposed to start until Lieutenant Ringler jumped. He was the first one. Then when his chute opened, then everything started. The Army come in across Lake Laguna de Bay, and the Air Force was flying up. Japanese had 10,000 reserves back from the camp. I think they said about 15 miles. So when the Air Force came out, they were protecting that they couldn't get going towards Los Banos. But everything worked out fine, which I didn't think it was going to.
You were rescuing prisoners.
Yeah.
How many prisoners were there?
2,104, 5.
Were they military or civilian?
All civilians. Most of them were church people. And I remember I went in there, how we got our name for our 11th Airborne Angels was we went in there, and the older people were, well, they all were old, but they come up and hug you. And this one lady said to me, I knew the Lord would send me help to rescue, because they sent angels. They'd never seen parachutes. And they thought the parachutes were angels coming down. That's where we got our nickname for our division, 11th Airborne Angels. And that was nice to hear that.
Did you parachute right into the camp?
Right up, maybe 10, 20 feet away.
What were the Japanese soldiers doing?
Well, half of the Japanese soldiers were taking calisthenics. They had their rifles stacked. See, we knew all this because we had the guerrillas, the Filipino guerrillas, that about 2 weeks before, they hung around the camp in the jungles, and they monitored everything that they were doing. And we knew exactly where everything was at. And but we had to jump low to make sure. And that morning, they had a line of prisoners lined up. They were going to start executing them. That was the order they gotten. And the prisoners would tell us that when an American plane would fly over, they couldn't look up. If they looked up, they put them back in the barracks and beat them, punish them like that. So when we jumped, there was 9 C-47s. That's what we jumped out of. And when they heard them, they couldn't even look up at us right then. But when one guy was saying that about the parachutes, he looked up, then everybody just didn't care. They knew we were coming.
How did the Japanese soldiers react once you started landing?
No good. They didn't know what was going on because it was such a perfect surprise. They didn't know what was happening, especially the guys that had their rifles stacked. They didn't know which way to go because that's where one of our groups was supposed to go there, and stop at. They couldn't get their rifles. Of course, and then they were expecting these reinforcements to come down from about 10 miles away, but the Air Force took care of that. As I say, we had so much good coming from the Air Force, the Navy, or the Army. That's why it was a perfect operation. Of course, us jumping surprised them. That got it started,
How did the prisoners react when they saw you?
Oh my, you wouldn't believe it, but you should have seen them. Some of them looked like a skeleton with skin stretched on them. Well, we're there before. I have some books that you can read sometime. When they knew the Army was coming, they didn't know that we were coming by airborne. They thought that just the Army. So they made the prisoners eat unhusked rice because the husk, it sort of tears up your intestines. And they were just starting to kill them, But they didn't know it was coming by air, So that's what the greatest success of that jump was, the surprise. And that was that, and our Lieutenant Ringler. He was such a fine guy. He knew what he was talking about, and we all done what he said, and we were proud to do it because we knew what he was talking about.
Now, was Lieutenant Ringer your company commander?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about him.
Well, he would come around, and when we weren't jumping, we camped, I'd talk to us just like old buddies, You never know he's coming in, and he'd sit down and talk to you. And then when he got close to the jumping going Los Banos, that's when he said, I got bad news, We still didn't know where we were going, They told us not to unpack, and he says bad news. So then he started to outline what we were supposed to do. Jump low, get in quick, and release the prisoners.
How low did you jump?
400 feet. That's the lowest jump we ever made.
How long were you in the air before you hit the ground?
Well, it's like John Ringler said, you oscillate your chute to keep them hitting the ground. He said he had about 3 oscillations, so it wasn't too long. Because you fall about 70, 80 feet before your chute opens right. You're down sometimes 100, till you get settled. Look up and check your chute, see if there's any holes in it.
How difficult was it to round up 2,100 prisoners?
Not too bad the way they had it set up. There was a lot of confusion in the camp because the older the older guys and women, they didn't want to take their belongings. I mean, they wanted to take their belongings, and one lady wouldn't come on with it until she got she called it her mess kit, but it was just a open fruit can, you know, that they ate out of. They didn't have plates or nothing like that in that camp. And she wouldn't go until we got her a can. She called it a mess kit, you know. But it was so, well, it's a thing that I'll never forget. I have dreams about that. That's the only thing. People were so glad. And I helped a man Blackledge. You know David Blackledge? He was 15 years old when I was there. He lives in Mechanicsburg. He's a retired colonel now. I call him once in a while. And he went through the Army, and he's an instructor at the War College, and then he was an administrative officer at Dickinson. And he came out as a bird colonel. And every time I call him, he said, "Oh, I think of you all the time." He said, I wouldn't be here if it wouldn't be for you fellas. You know, and that was nice to hear. And he lives in Mechanicsburg.
Have you had a chance to meet any of the other prisoners since then?
No. Well, we met a couple, because every year we had a reunion at the War College. So we get about 10 or 12. It's about all. And finally we only jumped with 129 people. That's all the parachutes we had. 9 planes, 129 people, rescuing 2,100 people. That's pretty good average.
Now, how did you get the prisoners out of the camp?
Well, our camp was close to Laguna de Bay, it's called, the big lake. That's where these Amtraks were coming across. So just like marching them, they walked in a line to the edge of the shore, which was not too far away from the camp. And we tried to load them up as fast as we can, but like I say, we had more trouble with them. They were afraid the amphibious vehicle would sink. When they seen it all made out of steel and it was going to go on water, they didn't ever seen that. But we finally got it where we were all going back to New Bilibid prison for, to take them there to let them rest and love them. I never seen a happier bunch of people.
Now, after the Los Banos mission, where did you serve next?
Well, I was going through the jungles down outside of Manila, in the jungle part there, Fort McKinley. I got shot in the knee with a sniper. I got infection, and they took me back to my mass unit. That's what I call. That's what it looked like. And I got infected, and they sent me. I come home on a hospital ship.
Now, you mentioned that you had done 3 combat parachute jumps. What was your third jump like?
Aparri. What it was like.
Yeah, where was it, and can you describe the operation?
That's the Air Force that we were getting ready to go up to when all the troops were getting ready to go to Japan, when Enola Gay dropped the bomb in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We were glad they dropped it because, boy, it saved a lot of lives. We were ready to go to Japan. Excuse me.
Now, what were you doing at the time that you were wounded?
Just walking through the jungle with my rifle and going after some prisoners, not prisoners, but people that was in the jungles. They'd go back. They would never surrender. They would just go back in the jungles and for their emperor,
How difficult was it to fight under those conditions?
I didn't have no trouble. It's either them or us. That's the way I feel. First one that pulls the trigger gets her. I was fortunate and lucky. I was in a lot of combat. I don't know why. Maybe the good Lord was on my side, but somebody got them bullets around me, all except one. And the Japanese sniper, a lot of people think that they're not a good shot because they hit you in the joints. But their philosophy is to hit you in the joint, which they were accurate at that, because Americans never let their dead lay. I mean, they're dead, they're wounded. So when you get wounded, it takes 4 men to carry you out with that blanket because you don't have a stretcher. So they would hit your joints, knees, and your ankles, just to get you out of action, you know.
So how were you evacuated after you were shot?
My buddies helped me. I could sort of get down a little bit, you know, around their shoulders and stuff. And they got me to a vehicle far down the road, you know. But Japanese used to use the Red Cross on the ambulances as a target. Every time you seen an ambulance sitting along the road, you could bet your buddy that their shell went through the cross, and boy, that's where it was. They used that for a target, and that's the way on the ship, hospital ship, they had a big Red Cross on the side, lit up, you know, going through combat waters yet. They just use that for our target. And I come back to San Francisco, and from San Francisco I went to Haddon Hall, New Jersey, Atlantic City.
Were you in a hospital at that time?
Yeah.
How long were you in the hospital?
Well, all my time with MD was about 11 months, just going through it. But actually in the hospital was about 4, I guess. When I couldn't walk, you know, they had a cast on up and all that stuff. And I come home.
What was it like coming home after being overseas in combat?
Wonderful. Couldn't beat her. I appreciated my home more than any place in the world. Because, boy, I never thought people in this universe could live like that. But they do. And I am so glad that the people at Country Meadows all appreciate World War II veterans. They take such good care of us. And it's a pleasure to know that.
What was it like when you first went back to your hometown after the war?
Oh, people had parties, but they come and they have get-together at the town square. I'm only from a small town, Marietta, so that's not too big. But we had good times, and they appreciated us. But I was so glad to be home.
Now, during the war, how aware were you of the bigger picture of how the war was being fought?
Well, I thought they could get it over quicker than what they got it. I thought we should have been more alert with Pearl Harbor. That I can't understand why had such a bombing and nobody knew them planes were coming. I guess it was like we did on Los Banos. You know, the Japanese didn't know we were going to surprise them, but that was only a small unit compared to all the Japanese airplanes and carriers, you know.
Now, when you look back at your experiences there, in addition to Los Banos, what else stands out for you?
Well, I liked it in Denver. That was a nice place. The trees good. But then we were demonstration troops at Fort Sill, too, in Oklahoma. We had a good time there for a couple of months before we got ready for overseas. But I didn't think it was, never thought war was complicated as it was. I thought we just shoot each other and one that shot the most won. It wasn't that way. We won, but.
Did you make any good friends during your time in the service?
Oh yeah, made a lot of good friends.
Have you managed to stay in touch with them over the years?
Some of them made a lot of bad ones too. I'll tell you.
What was your job when you were in the 11th Airborne?
Well, I was a regular rifleman, and then I was on a 60 millimeter mortar. We carried that, and then I carried a flamethrower for a while. That was nice. Had fun with that. Boy, that would make them scamper out of the cage. That was used mostly for the Japanese had a lot of caves, and to get them out, you could only get them out with a flamethrower or white phosphorus grenades. And boy, that's another thing. You see these fellas sitting around outside, and when these Japanese would come out, they were saying, "There he goes," just like hunting a rabbit, you know. "There he goes, get him." And it just don't make sense. And we got to shoot people to keep this world alive.
Were you concerned that when you were carrying the flamethrower, were you concerned about the tank being shot?
Tank?
The tank of in the.
Oh, see, I know what you mean. Well, I always praised that didn't hit that there, the fuel tank. Same way I carried a bazooka for a while. It's like carrying a piece of range spout with a trigger on, you know. But that was a powerful thing. I'd go right through a tank.
Where were you when you heard that the Japanese surrendered?
I was down in Atlantic City. I got married. That's where my wife and I were on our honeymoon. And we picked the wrong place because, boy, when the war was over, there was thousands and thousands of people in that, down in there. But everybody was happy and having a good time.
Now, how would you say over the years that your experience during the war affected your life?
Well, it affected my life to the extent I appreciate people more. I try to be careful who are my friends, because sometimes you think someone is your friend, but it's someone that you can't trust. I sort of got more intelligence that I can know by talking to somebody for a while. I can trust. It's a way, and the way of living. I appreciate what I had when I got home. I used to, wouldn't eat this, wouldn't eat that, but now I eat anything you put in a pot.
So what were your living conditions like when you were in the Philippines?
Well, if you like sleeping in a foxhole, so a lot of times we stood up in the foxhole at night, had to sleep because the Japanese, you couldn't pitch no tents or nothing. In a foxhole, and I guess getting drinking water was a hard thing. We had those halazone tablets that you put in with the water, to purify it. We drank it. That was that. And seeing so many people that were tortured, you just run on them there. Nobody gathers them up. Just let them go. I was never used to that, seeing people being treated like that. And those people just don't seem to care.
What did you do when you weren't in combat?
I'd go into the camps, PX, and hunt the cold beer. That tasted good then. It was so hot. It was so hot there in the summertime. I remember we used to. They get us up around 2 o'clock because the sun came up then, and have these metal mats for the runways. That's what they make, and we'd be running for about an hour and a half out there every morning, trotting. They keep us in shape, and I hated that. Get out there and run, but you had to do that, and just follow orders. You follow orders to get along, but don't talk back. because boy, you're on the unpopular list then.
Was there anything that happened that was particularly funny to you during the war?
Not, well, one thing that was funny, when you jump, you count 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. So we were in Fort Benning Jump School, and we had a tough sergeant, instructors. So this kid jumped, and when he landed on the ground with his shoe on top of him, he started to count 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. Then the sergeant didn't go for that, fooling around. That was funny. And one guy landed on another guy's chute. It don't sound like it should be funny, but it was funny the way he got off of it. You got to get up and stand up and get off, because that's like hitting the ground again. Your chute collapsed, But he had to get off real quick. He's trying to roll, and we were laughing at him. I couldn't help it. I never seen a guy killed due to a lack of chute not opening. Through that, we always had good. My biggest part was the first 5 jumps you pack yourself, you and your buddy, and then after that, riggers give you a chute. That's it. They come out with a GI truck full of parachutes, and you go past and they throw you one, and you wonder if that thing is packed right. Because I used to fool a guy. We used to, in these big folding sheds. When you put the fold in your parachute, you lay a 5-pound, you call them shot bags, like buckshot in them to keep the fold down. And so when you pack them up, they're inspected every so often with inspectors. And we would take the guy's shot bag out and tell him. And boy, that's the first 5 we packed. And he'd be awake all night, because they wouldn't let you open them back up, That's fun to do that there to them. But it was a good experience. I learned a lot about people. And it don't take long when you and your buddies fighting for each other's life to protection, and you get to know people. And some of them you don't want to know, but you're with them.
Can you describe some of your friends during the war?
Well, I had a lot of friends that would help me out, when you were tied down from fire and stuff, and they'd pull me back, because I was always one to go front. I guess brave. I was brave. Was nothing brave. But I don't know. Can't describe one more than the other, because I had a lot of friends. We helped each other. The thing that would get to me when you're after these banzai attacks, you'd lay back and you'd hear someone out in the woods hollering, "Good Lord, I don't want to die, I don't want to die." Boy, that gets to you. You can't get up and go get them, because you don't know how many Japanese are laying around. And a lot of times they let them holler, instead of shoot, because when they hollered, they knew that the Americans were still around. Some people think the Japanese didn't know what they were doing, but they were smart people. They had a brain. They knew look how they planned that Pearl Harbor thing. And we didn't know anything about it.
Now, you served in Manila as well. What was your experience like there?
In Manila, well, there was so much stuff shot up and dead Japs in the streets, We got to clean that up first. You had grave registration would come along and pick the dead up too. It's not a nice sight to see. You just talk about it and say, "Yeah, pick your dead up and throw them in a truck." But boy, it gets to you when you see them putting them in the truck and your buddies. It's hard. So when we come home, we expect to be treated like veterans. Some people, I don't know. I just can't get myself together with some. But I guess that's life. Huh?
What advice would you have for young people in terms of learning about World War II?
Well, they got to stop and think about it. They wouldn't be doing what they're doing if it wasn't for World War II. Because we were fighting for our country then, our freedom. We wasn't fighting these other wars as helpers. We were fighting for us. And that means a lot. So I talk to some young people, and they can't wait to enlist in the Army or in the Air Force. Right? But then some other ones said, I'll never go there, you know. So how do you explain things to people that don't want to help? Do you ever try that? They just don't listen to you, and which they should. Because, boy, I'm afraid I don't want to be around when this Third World War starts. And it's going to be one. We're building too much military might.
Now let's go back to the period after Pearl Harbor. What was the sense in the public in terms of serving in the military?
Well, I don't think some people could believe what happened in Pearl Harbor, and they didn't bother. We're not going to war. You know, we're not going to do this. But when Roosevelt declared it, then they figured, well, we have to go. And so I think the draft was in then, wasn't it? The draft was in, but we had so many Rosie the Riveters, you know, and things like that. There was a lot. One of our best things, which some people think was awful, was we used to wait the evening, can't wait the evening, to listen to Tokyo Rose. She would get on there and play that good old American music, and then get on to say, you know your wife has found another boyfriend, or propaganda stuff, and that would come all through the place. They had that all. You ought to see some of the stuff she said. I talked to the guy that sits at our table, he's over there, Marty, he's in the Navy for all them years, and he said on his ship they had 2 people that jumped overboard because they got the Dear John letters. You know what they are. Due to circumstances beyond my control, I found another. And some guys can't take that. And but we like Tokyo Rose.
What did you like about her?
Of course, she played the good American music, and talk about stuff back home. You know, they're out at the restaurants and they're doing this. And your wife's out dancing tonight, and we know that wasn't true. I can't say it wasn't out dancing, but there's where they should have sent those guys in the service, get them back in there.
How would you describe the public perception after Pearl Harbor and that today?
Well, after Pearl Harbor, I think they all got aroused up and come to their senses to know that we could be invaded. Whoever thought they would come to Pearl Harbor? Then when they came there, then we thought that, but now everybody don't want war. It just seems like more people against it than anything, which it should be. We shouldn't be where we're at, getting men killed for nothing.
Now, why did you decide to join the Army?
Well, I come home to the CC camps, and they were taking enlistments in the Army. I thought, well, there's no use hanging around here. But I thought we're going to win the war fast. But that didn't happen that way. But I went to the paratroops, and my buddy, got examined together. He went to the Navy.
Did you consider in any of the other services?
No. I wanted to be a paratrooper.
What was it about being a paratrooper that appealed to you?
I just thought it'd be a good experience flying through the air, and it was just like free jumping, and I thought I liked it.
Have you parachuted since the war?
No. I'd love to parachute with one of these rectangle chutes and see the difference between the rectangles and the round ones. We had the round chutes, you know. You couldn't guide them as well as these rectangles. But what do you do when you're 18 years old? I'll come out. But I was 21 when I stepped out the plane at Los Banos. That was February the 24th at Los Banos, and I was 21. And we never got no respect for that because that same day, the Marines put that flag up on Mount Suribachi. Everything was a Suribachi. And here we just released 2,100 prisoners, which were kept for 3 years. And we can do, MacArthur sent a letter to our division thanking us for the operation. We didn't get no flag. The Marines got her.
Now, did you train at Camp Toccoa?
Yeah.
What was your experience there?
Well, the training was tough, boy. They try to wash you out, you know, try to make you quit. And them instructors were, boy, they were mean. But who stayed were good men, and we were glad they were treated us like they did, because I think that's what saved a lot of men. We were in good physical condition, and I mean physical condition. We didn't get them, and there's nothing more to do but stay healthy, and they seen to that, because they wanted us for jumpers. And then we went a whole way across the country, Fort Sill, Denver, San Francisco, and then we went overseas.
Dick Penwell, corporal in the U.S. Army's 11th Airborne Division during World War II. Thank you for joining us.